Hello, I'm Owen Ralph from Greenwood Side, and in this video I want to talk about the crucial things which, as a musician, you should be including on your website. So, back in the days before social media, your website was a crucial tool for engaging with your audience specifically. You maybe had like a discussion forum on there, you would have had comments at the bottom of your news items, you would have had a blog again with comments. That was where all of your digital engagement with your audiences happened. But now, as everyone knows, the social media platforms are where it's at for audiences. Audiences don't want to have to come to you anymore, they want you to come to them and to come to the places which they already inhabit and to feed them content that way. Your website still needs to work for your audience. It still needs to have all of the key points in easy reach which are going to convert people, be that kind of reaching your social media pages or buying items from your shop, buying gig tickets. All of that stuff needs to be there, kind of readily available on your website for audiences when they come. But all of that kind of goes with the assumption that people aren't going to be coming regularly to your website anymore like they possibly used to back in the day. So really then your website's primary purpose needs to be as a resource for the industry. And I can tell you that kind of 999 times out of 1,000, people doing the marketing, the promoters, they're on your side, they want your gigs to sell well, they're going to do everything they can to make the event a success. If you don't have a well-structured, well-resourced website, you're making their job a lot harder for them and you're making it more difficult for them to help you. So here are a few things which should definitely be on your website in order to make the most of the people who are there trying to help you. So firstly, you need some high-res photos. Now, photo resolution gets a little bit confusing because there are a lot of different numbers flying around and some of them kind of overlap and some of them don't. So just to explain what there is, there's your resolution, which is the number of dots per inch, is normally what that is measured in. There's dimensions, which is kind of how long and how tall it is. And there's the file size, which is literally how much space it takes up on the computer, how much space it takes up on your website, and how long it takes people to download, basically. In terms of having images on your website for design purposes, so for example, if you've got a header image, just to kind of, as a design element, then really you should be going with relatively low resolution images for that. And by that, I mean specifically 72 dpi for resolution and no more than about 1920 pixels wide, really. But those images aren't what I'm talking about here, so you need to treat those slightly differently to your press photos, which are there for the purposes of industry people. For those photos, they need to be as high resolution as possible because those will likely end up in print, and print needs a significantly higher resolution than digital use does. So for those, the ideal number is 300 dpi resolution. That is kind of standard for print. If you've got a lower resolution, say 72 dpi, which is what you get for web, but the pictures are sort of at least 4,000 or 5,000 pixels wide, then that's probably fine. That'll probably do the job. If you're on Windows, the easiest way to check is to right-click on the file and go to Properties, then go to the Details tab. And then if you scroll down a little bit, you will see the resolution and the dimensions and all the other stuff. If you're on a Mac, it's a similar process. You Control-click, and then you go to Get Info, and then you'll see it there. So then once you've got the photos, the most user-friendly way you can add them to your website is to combine them all into a zip file and then upload that to your website. The actual process for doing that will depend very much on the content management system your website uses. So, you might need to work that one out for yourself. But the important thing is just to get them up there in some form or another where they can be downloaded and then used on venue websites and in venue brochures and all of that kind of thing. So the second thing you should have on your website is maybe not immediately intuitive, but it's past tour dates. And that's not just upcoming ones, you need some past ones on there as well. And there are two reasons for that. One is, I guess, reasonably obvious, and that's for promoters primarily. If they're looking to book you and they want to know what kind of venue you're likely to fill, if you can give some examples of the type of venues you've played recently, then they know what kind of equivalent venue they might need to get to put you on this time. If you last played in London at the Green Note in Camden and they book the Royal Festival Hall, someone's going to lose a lot of money. So it's good just to have that there so they can see what you've done in the past. So the second reason, which might not be quite so immediately obvious, is for marketers. So say for example, I'm the marketing person at the venue you're playing at, and I go to your website and I can see that you recently played Union Chapel, say you were there a year ago. What I will quite likely do then is send an email to the marketing team at Union Chapel and say, I've got this artist coming who played at your venue last year. Will you maybe include this gig in your next newsletter? And then in return, I will include a Union Chapel gig in my next newsletter. Or maybe they might say, will you post about it on your Facebook page? And I'll post about it on my Facebook page. And that's a really common thing that marketers do. It's called a PS swap or a social media swap. And it's a really good way of just kind of having a mutually beneficial way of sharing information for our respective audiences. They might do a similar thing with flyers. A lot of venues have flyer racks in the venue, which is managed by an external third-party agency. And then various venues and organisations will pay a little bit of money to have their flyers put in a rack which they think is targeted at a specific audience that they want. So again, that's really useful to know which types of venues to put your flyers in. And if there's a gig at Union Chapel with a similar audience to your audience, I might pay someone to stand outside and hand out flyers at the end of it. Again, it's all about just knowing where to target your marketing and know about where your audience might be and how to reach them. So definitely include some past tour dates, because it makes the people doing the marketing, it gives them a lot more to work with, basically. So the third thing, which again might be fairly obvious, but isn't always done that well, is to make sure you have a bio on your website. And I don't mean just an album press release that talks about your latest album. I mean a bio which talks about you. So specifically, if someone who hasn't heard of you before is considering coming to your gig, it's what you would use to explain who you are and what they would expect from one of your concerts. I wrote an article a couple of years ago about writing a good bio, which I will link to below rather than going over that again. But just to add to it, if you want to be really helpful, it's good if you can include a bio which is 100 words long, 50 words long, and 25 words long. That way then whatever it's needed for, wherever it's going to end up, you have a bio of a good length that can be used in like a season brochure or on a website or anywhere like that. Otherwise, if you only provide a really long bio and then the marketing person has to squeeze it into a tiny little space in a season brochure, they're just going to rewrite it themselves and you won't have any control over the end result, unless they run it past you first, which they might well not, 'cause they're busy people. Next, make sure you have a list of contacts on your website. And I'm not just talking about an embedded contact form. Those are great for dealing with members of the public and questions you get from your fans, but for industry people, it's just a bit of a pain and you're never really sure who you're talking to or whether the message has even got through. So for the sake of making sure that everyone who needs to contact you can, and everyone who you want to contact you can, make sure you have someone to contact if we want to book you, if I want to interview you or make some content with you for kind of press purposes, and then maybe just have a general contact as well for members of the public to send condescending messages about your guitar playing. So the final thing is to have some performance videos on your website. Now, flashy promo videos are lovely, they look great, they cost a lot to make, so you want to use them as much as you possibly can, but for a promoter who might want to book you for a concert, or for a marketer who is trying to explain to a potential audience what your gig is going to be like and what they're going to experience, really they just need some idea of what you are like on stage if they haven't seen you. So even a crappy mobile phone video is absolutely fine, just anything that gives some kind of impression of what people will experience when you get up on that stage. And that's it. If you do all of those things, marketers will absolutely love you, they will put their all into selling tickets for your gigs, and it will all be mutually beneficial. If you have any questions about any of that, just drop me an email, and happy websiting.